In the vast and unforgiving skies of World War II, there were many mysteries, many battles, and many stories of bravery, but few stories remain as strange and unbelievable as the tale of the WW2 plane that vanished in the air, only to reappear months later, leaving soldiers, pilots, and investigators confused for decades. This is not just a story about a missing aircraft, it is a journey into the unknown, a tale that defies logic and challenges everything we know about the war, the weather, and the limits of human understanding. Imagine the cold winds of 1943 sweeping across the vast blue expanse above the Atlantic. The crew of a B-24 Liberator sets out on a routine patrol mission, confident in their training and experience. The engines roar like steel giants, and the aircraft climbs higher with determination. The men on board are calm at first, focused on their instruments, watching the waves far below. As the war continues across the world, they expect nothing out of the ordinary, nothing but another long mission through open skies. But then something begins to change. A strange haze appears ahead, like a wall of shifting gray. The pilots look around, trying to understand whether it is just a storm or something far more unusual. The haze grows thicker, swallowing the wings, the fuselage, the cockpit. One of the crew members later described it as flying into a cloud that felt alive, dense, heavy, and unnatural, even though he would never find the right words to explain it. Inside the aircraft, the temperature drops, the radio crackles, the compass spins wildly, the altimeter becomes unresponsive. The pilots shout commands, but the sound feels muffled, as if the air itself is resisting them. The B-24 begins to drift. Something is pulling it, or pushing it, or simply disorienting it in a way that no one can explain. And then all at once the aircraft disappears from the radar, the radio goes silent, and the massive machine vanishes from the sky like it never existed. Back at the base, panic spreads among the officers. They try to make contact, but there is only empty silence. The search begins instantly. Ships, aircraft, and patrol units comb the region. The ocean remains calm, but there is no sign of wreckage, no floating debris, no oil trail, no parachutes, nothing. It is as if the B-24 never entered that part of the sky. Families wait for news, hoping for a miracle. As days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, the military eventually declares the crew missing in action. The file is closed, the mystery sealed, but fate had other plans. Months later, when the war front shifts and new missions begin, a distant outpost in a remote desert receives a shocking report. A plane has been spotted resting intact on the sand, not crashed, not burning, but simply sitting as though placed there by an invisible hand. Patrol soldiers approach it cautiously. The moment they see the tail number, they freeze. It is the same B-24 that vanished months earlier, thousands of kilometers away from where it disappeared. The crew is nowhere to be found, not a footprint around the aircraft, not a trace of struggle, no signs of emergency landing. The aircraft looks weathered but untouched, as if it descended gently from above. The fuel tanks are dry, the instruments show unusual readings, the radio is dead. The logbook ends abruptly on the day the plane disappeared. The soldiers exchange uneasy glances. They have no explanation for how the plane traveled such a distance without any communication, no crash, no damage, and no crew. The investigators begin their work. They study the engines, the structure, the interior. Everything looks normal except for one strange detail. The hands of every clock inside the plane have stopped at the exact same moment. No one knows why, or how. The desert wind blows around the silent aircraft, adding a haunting soundtrack to a mystery that grows deeper with every hour. Speculations rise. Some believe the plane was caught in a rare atmospheric phenomenon. Others whisper about time distortions or gravitational anomalies. Some suggest that the crew abandoned the aircraft, but there are no parachutes missing, no emergency supplies taken. Others say it might have been part of a secret mission covered up by the military, but no document, no commander, and no witness ever confirms such a claim. One of the most chilling theories involves a phenomenon pilots often described during the war, something they called dead skies zones, where instruments failed, vision blurred, and aircraft drifted off course as if entering a different layer of reality. Some pilots survived such strange storms, others were not so lucky, and some, like the crew of this B-24, simply vanished. As the plane is inspected further, investigators discover that the propellers are worn in a way that suggests the engines were running even after the crew should have been unconscious or gone. The desert sun burns overhead, the heat creates mirages on the sand, and yet nothing can explain how the aircraft landed itself without human control. The plane is eventually transported back to a military facility, studied for months, and then quietly stored away. The official report states only that the aircraft was found with no crew and no signs of mechanical failure. The rest of the story is buried in classified files, whispered by veterans, and passed down as one of the strangest events in aviation history. As the years pass, the legend grows. Some believe the crew slipped into another time and never returned. Some believe the aircraft crossed dimensions and reappeared without its pilots. Others think it was an experiment gone wrong, covered by the shadows of wartime secrecy. And then there are those who believe the simplest explanation, that the crew attempted a desperate landing in a storm and perished in the desert, but even this theory fails because the footprints, the gear, and the bodies were never found, not even decades later. Today, historians, researchers, and aviation experts still debate the case. They examine every detail: the vanished radio signals, the strange weather patterns, the unexpected reappearance. Every clue seems to deepen the mystery rather than solve it. The story remains one of the most captivating puzzles of WW2, a moment where fact and legend collide in the vast silent skies. The abandoned plane stands as a reminder that even in an age of technology, engines, and navigation, humans are still vulnerable to forces we cannot explain. The men who vanished with their aircraft serve as a symbol of the unknown risks faced by pilots during the war. The desert that held the aircraft for months carries the weight of their untold story, and the world continues to wonder what happened in that strange haze. What force moved the aircraft across continents? Why did every clock stop at the same moment? And where did the crew go? The answers may never come, but the mystery lives on, carried through generations, a haunting reminder that the sky is full of stories we cannot fully understand. The plane that vanished and reappeared months later remains one of the greatest unsolved wartime enigmas, a tale of disappearance, reappearance, and unanswered questions echoing across history and forever, reminding us that the world is bigger, stranger, and more unpredictable than we ever imagined. The mystery deepened further when the military brought in aviation engineers, meteorologists, and intelligence officers, all trying to make sense of the impossible appearance of the aircraft. They studied the wings, the landing gear, the cockpit, and every inch of the fuselage. They looked for stress marks, bent metal, bullet holes, or any sign that the plane was forced down or damaged in flight, but there was nothing. The landing was too perfect, too controlled, yet the plane had no pilot, no co-pilot, no navigator, no gunner, no one at all to guide it. The desert around the Discovery site held no answers either. Instead, it whispered questions over endless dunes and shifting winds. The sand was smooth except for the imprint of the aircraft itself. There were no boot marks, no drag marks, no sign of movement from living men or animals. It was as if the plane had simply materialized out of thin air, placed gently on the ground by an unseen force. The investigators were baffled, many of them experienced veterans who had seen crashes, explosions, burn marks, emergency landings, yet never had they encountered an aircraft that appeared untouched after vanishing for months. The discovery spread quietly within certain circles, though never officially reported to the public. Rumors traveled between bases, between soldiers who passed the story in low voices around campfires or in dim barracks. They spoke of the ghost plane, the Phantom Liberator, the Desert Wanderer. Some believed the plane was a warning. Others thought it was a sign, perhaps a message from something beyond human understanding. Months after the discovery, a second surprising detail emerged. The local tribes living near the desert region told soldiers they had seen strange lights in the sky weeks before the aircraft was found. They described a glowing shape drifting silently under the night sky, moving with unusual smoothness, unlike any plane they had ever seen. The lights vanished over the dunes and the night returned to silence. The next morning, nothing unusual was found, but the memory of the glowing shape remained with the people who witnessed it. When the military heard these accounts, they added them to the growing list of unexplained details, but they could not confirm nor deny anything more. Experts were called to analyze the aircraft. One of them, a specialist in flight instruments, noticed that every gauge inside the cockpit showed readings that made no sense. They indicated altitude changes and course shifts that did not match any known flight path. They showed impossible turns and rapid drops that would have torn the aircraft apart, yet here it stood perfectly intact. It was as if the instruments had recorded a journey through a sky that did not obey the rules of physics. The logbook found inside the plane added another layer to the mystery. The handwriting of the navigator ended mid-sentence, not with a final word or signature, but abruptly, like someone had been interrupted in a moment of shock or confusion. The final line described entering an unusual cloud formation unlike anything they had seen. The navigator wrote that visibility was dropping and the plane felt heavier. Then the word stopped there. The pen mark became a long fading line, as if the hand lost control or was pulled away suddenly. Investigators stared at this detail for hours, trying to understand what might have happened inside the plane during those last moments of recorded activity. As the months passed, whispers grew within military intelligence. Some believed the crew encountered a rare weather phenomenon, a spatial distortion caused by conflicting atmospheric layers. Others suggested the plane flew into a region where the magnetic fields became unstable, causing instruments to fail and leading to catastrophic navigation errors. But even these theories could not explain the perfect condition of the aircraft, nor the fact that it landed smoothly without skilled human hands. Then there were darker theories, ones that Officers avoided speaking aloud. Some thought the crew had seen something or discovered something that the government wanted hidden. Perhaps they were taken or removed to prevent information from spreading, but such ideas had no documents, no proof, only shadows. Decades after the war, the files regarding the missing aircraft were partially declassified, yet even the released reports were full of blacked out lines, missing pages, and unexplained phrases. The official statement remained unclear for reasons unknown. The aircraft was recovered with no crew present and no signs of malfunction. The rest was left to speculation. Historians studying the case today still argue over what might have happened. Some propose a time displacement theory suggesting the plane moved through a distorted pocket of air where time passed differently. They point to the stopped clocks, the unfinished logbook, and the sudden disappearance from radar. The idea may sound impossible, but so does everything else about the case. Aviation experts who read the reports conclude that no human landing could have matched the precision displayed by the aircraft in the desert. They wonder whether automatic systems played a role, but the B-24 had no such technology at that time. Others note that the engines showed signs of functioning long after the expected fuel rundown, yet there was no indication of crew intervention. This detail remains one of the greatest puzzles of the investigation. Even now, researchers visit the region hoping to find clues, perhaps a fragment missed by earlier teams or a trace of the crew fate. But the desert gives nothing back. It keeps its silence, its secrets buried beneath endless sand and scorching sun. Some say the desert swallowed the men, some say the sky took them. Others believe the answer lies somewhere between those two possibilities. The story of the plane continues to inspire documentaries, articles, and speculative books. Some claim the plane traveled through a rare type of storm that bends reality. Others believe it crossed into an uncharted atmospheric layer where time behaves differently. There are even those who connect the event to other wartime mysteries, like ships disappearing without trace or pilots reporting moments of lost time. Yet despite all theories, one fact remains unchanged: the aircraft returned, but the men did not. Their names remain on the missing lists, honored but never understood. Their families received no closure, no remains, no final explanation. Only a lingering hope that someday the truth might emerge. And still the unanswered questions echo across history. Where did the crew go? What did they experience in the strange haze? Why did the plane travel across continents without guidance? How did it land without human hands? And what force stopped every clock at the same mysterious moment? No one knows, and perhaps no one ever will. The sky holds many wonders and many terrors. Some are understood. Some remain locked behind clouds and storms and invisible barriers. The story of the WW2 plane that vanished and reappeared months later without its crew remains one of the most haunting mysteries of the war, a reminder that even in an age of machines and engines and courage, there are still places on this earth and beyond it that we do not fully understand.